Transportation Committee meeting for June 10th, 2024. Our first order of business is approving the agenda. If there's no changes or additions, we can proceed. Seeing none, we can move on to approval of the May 13th, 2024 meeting minutes. Did anyone have changes or additions? Seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a move to approve. I heard it.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Councilmember Pacheco, second by Councilmember Morales. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the minutes are adopted. And now we're moving to employee recognition. And I am looking for Paul and Leslie to come up. Hi, welcome.
Hi. I'm going to grab one more chair because we have three of us.
Awesome.
In addition to me.
Got it.
I'd invite Jim and Alex and Justin to come up. Go ahead and have a seat to be recognized. I'm also here on behalf of Leslie. She's off today, so we can pinch hit.
There you go.
So it is really a pleasure to be here presenting these three individuals for a variety of different reasons. Jim is a business systems analyst, and he reports to Leslie. And he's been with MTS for about 2 years, assisting with technology coordination and oversight. We want to recognize Jim for the great work he has done coordinating with Metro Transit Police regarding video requests to support and resolve issues for MTS contracted transit service and its customers. This includes finding the correct video clips, which can take a lot of time, or tracking down the right hard drive from the bus to make sure that the right video stream gets to Metro Transit Police so they can do their investigation, and that a correct chain of custody occurs with that video clip. So all very, very important items that Jim does and takes very seriously. Jim also does a fantastic job of managing our technology contractor, Priscillis, through coordination of some of the removal of our technology so it's available for our new buses to go into service. And so really valuable service to keep our fleet moving through the pipeline. And Jim, thank you so much for all those activities.
I'm glad to do it.
Alex Curtis, who is right here. Alex is my senior project administrator, fleet maintenance. Alex has been with the council and MTS for 16 years? 17 years. Time flies when we're having fun. And so a funny thing happened a few years ago. We had this thing called the pandemic. And not only did it flip the world on its head, it's really flipped asset management way, way behind because of delays, difficulties getting parts, difficulties getting equipment, all of those things. And we've never experienced that. So we've had to do new things and learn new things. And Alex has been an instrumental part in working with our contractors as we couldn't replace fleet when we promised we would. He's managed a maintenance reimbursement program to ensure that our old fleet stays healthy. Our contractors don't take on additional financial burdens that they weren't expecting to do as part of that contract. And so I'm really, really appreciative of Alex on that role. It's made a huge difference in us not having, breakdowns on the road and being able to keep our fleet going. Alex also has done a fantastic job of coordinating getting the fleet into service. So vendors get the buses from the manufacturer. Manufacturer gets them to our technology provider. Technology provider gets them to our contractors. Our contractors then finally get them into service. It's like a wedding. You have to hurry up and wait at each step. He does a great job of coordinating all that. Peacemaker, counselor, kind of all of those jobs to make sure that everybody stays happy and yet we get what we need. So really grateful for that, Alex. Justin Allen in the middle. Justin's been with us for 10 years. He is a business systems analyst. Justin has also gotten to experience life post-pandemic in trying to coordinate. We're going to have 700 buses either started to be delivered, 150, 60 are delivered and in service. We've got a pipeline of 600 more buses to be built. These are all in federal grants. These are all in different projects. There is a lot of tracking that takes place to make sure that we're doing this right with the feds and with ourselves, and again, keeping everybody happy. Justin anticipates what I need to make sure we're reporting everything correctly and has designed a system to let finance see where we're at and allow us to make changes. So if we need to move some buses to microtransit out of a future order, okay, we can do that, and he's figured out a way to track all that. So invaluable in terms of anticipating all the things that we need. So really appreciative of all three of these individuals and the hard work that they've done to manage our assets at MTS, all 1,200 of those that are on the road. So thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We've got some lovely clocks right.
All right.
Uh-oh.
Best part.
Presents.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate what you do.
Put back. Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you. All right, and Alex. Thank you guys for everything you do. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, now on to reports, and we first have our MTS report. We have Amy Benowitz here.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Sitting in for Charles Carlson today. Just one item to report for MTS. We are starting the, I'll call it somewhat lengthy process of releasing our transportation policy plan for public comment. As you're probably aware, we're a little bit ahead of schedule of the other plans because we bring our documents through our Transportation Advisory Board and our Technical Advisory Committee and also their Planning Committee. So this Thursday, the TAC Planning Committee will hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully they will recommend the TPP and that it move forward. It would then go to TAC and it'll go to TAB on July 17th, I believe, and then to this committee for approval. But once we have TAC Planning's approval this Thursday, we are going to again release it for your review. If you'll remember, you've already seen some of the chapters. It is very lengthy, and we are going to release it both for you and TAB. So if you want to begin your review and spend your summer weeks reading the Transportation Policy Plan, it is available to you, and you will be approving it for release, I believe, the first meeting in August. So that is all I have today.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments? Now you know what your beach reading assignment is for the summer. So, all right, and now we will turn to General Manager Canderas.
Chair Barber, council members, just a couple reminders. This Saturday, June 15th, is our quarterly service change. So those changes that you heard about back in May will go into effect. And then the other reminder is on Tuesday, June 18th, we are celebrating 2 rail anniversaries. Green Line turns 10 years old this month and Blue Line turns 20 years old this month. So we will be gathering at Target Field Station to celebrate those milestones. So I'd be happy to take any questions about that or anything else that people have.
Thank you, Leslie. Any questions, comments? And we've all got invites for the light rail event, so if you can make it, come on over. It should be fun. It's kind of an exciting day, so. All right. We don't have reports today for TAB or TAC, so we're going to move on to our consent items. There's 2 items on consent. I'd entertain a motion to approve the items on consent.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tyrone Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Now we are on to our non-consent agenda. Our first one is business item 2024-110, JT, the 2024 budget amendment. We have Ed Petrie and Heather Giesel here. Or at least Ed.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair, committee members. I'm running solo this evening. So Ed Petrie, Director of Finance at Metro Transit. I'll be doing the Metro Transit portion and the MTS portion of both the operating and capital amendments. So once again, we're here to present the amendment, or I'm here to present the amendment to the 2024 Unified Budget. This amendment includes both changes to both the operating and the capital budgets. It's business item 2024-110JT. One of the things, like I've said every year, this amendment is one of our largest amendments that we'll bring forward to the council. Funding has become available. We've lined it up. If you look at the amendment, the size of it, there are a number of projects that we're bringing forward this evening. So I will go through the changes on Metro Transit and MTS, then I will then go to the operating side. So for Metro Transit, we do have the first section is called closing projects or reallocating funding. These are projects that are completed, that we're then closing, and then reallocating the funding within the capital program. But the meat of our amendment for Metro Transit is authorizing new projects. We're bringing in nearly $92 million in funding for projects. As the funding has now become available, and we're also now ready to move these projects forward from the council's adopted CIP into the capital budget. So I'll just go through some of the major highlights of those projects. It includes the Gold Line BRT. We're bringing in $8.8 million of federal funds for the Gold Line BRT project. These are surface transportation federal funds. We're also going to be bringing in funding to purchase 73 40-foot biodiesel buses. And then we have a large contingency of state of good repair type projects for Metro Transit. These include hoist replacement, major improvements to support facilities, ADA bus stops, the Haywood campus administration renovation, support facilities door replacement, the bus mobile column lift replacements, TCC consoles expansions, IS capital upgrades and enhancements and replacements, police substations at the Blue Line, on the Blue Line at our Franklin Avenue station, replacement of some of our fuel storage systems, operator and maintenance simulator training equipment for both operators and for maintenance staff. As I mentioned, this is a total of approximately $92 million for Metro Transit. These projects were in the council's adopted CIP are now ready to move forward. On the MTS side of the capital budget, it includes, as I mentioned, same thing with Metro Transit, some administrative adjustments and some closing of projects that are now ready to close and move them and close the projects out of the CIP. The biggest piece for them, though, also includes authorizing new projects. MTS is requesting to bring in approximately $64.8 million into the capital budgets for a variety of projects that have been identified in the capital budget. They include Metro Mobility and other contracted services, vehicle replacements and expansion, technology projects, and 40-foot buses for the U of M. On the operating side, for Metro Transit, it includes the addition of 22 FTEs. 15 of these FTEs are for Metro Transit bus operations. 7 of the FTEs are for light rail operations. The 15 additions for the bus side align with the growth of the transit system, our continued focus on safety, state of good repair, and aligning with the use of the sales tax. We have FTE additions in commuter outreach, engineering facilities, marketing, transit information, and bus transportation. The funding for these FTEs was included in the 2024 budget. So in our 24 budget that you adopted in December, we had a placeholder for FTEs. We just had not yet identified what they were going to be. So as we have been working through that in now 2024, we're identifying what FTEs they are. So this is a $0 change to the budget for bus operations because it was already in the budget. On rail, we're requesting the addition of 7 FTEs to, believe it or not, to begin initiating the hiring for the Southwest line. Many of these FTEs have a very long lead time, but with any of these lines, like for example, when we did the Blue Line or the Green Line, we started pre-revenue operations, so we need to start the process of beginning recruitment for some of these FTEs. We're anticipating starting these FTEs not starting until about October. So we have an adjustment of just over $364,000 in the light rail budget. These FTEs then will be full-time in 2025. But once again, these are 70 FTEs for beginning of the Southwest operations. On the operating side for MTS, it includes $100,000 in reserve funding to hire 1 FTE in Metro Mobility. This position will investigate customer complaints. The amendment also authorizes approximately $70,000 in invest revenues to be transferred from contracted services operating budget to the capital program. There's an equal offset then from federal funds being transferred from the capital program to the operating budget. These funds then will be used for engines, transmissions, and midlife vehicle rehabs. The other item in the budget for MTS includes an amendment transfer pass-through of $7.7 million for demand response microtransit service grants to the suburban transit providers. This funding was originally authorized in a prior budget amendment, but this action tonight simply moves the funding from the pass-through budget to the capital budget. And with that, Madam Chair, our requested action is that the Metropolitan Council, the requested action is the Metropolitan Council authorize the 2024 unified budget as indicated in accordance with the attached tables. And I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ed. Any questions or comments? I just have a couple of quick comments. So Ed did mention the hiring of some new people. As you know, we're opening several new lines, both bus and rail, and sort of what we're seeing is really that front end of planning for the future. We had a big discussion about it at the committee of the whole a couple of weeks ago or last week. And so you can see where some of this is coming into play. You also see in this where there's funding being allocated to the suburban transit providers as we develop our policy for how we're going to distribute sales tax in the future. We wanted to get some funding out to them in the short term. So this is so they have some budgeted certainty for this year. So that's what that is. So with that, if there's no other questions, I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-110.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales, second by Councilmember Tony Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ed. All right, now we are on to business item 2024-111, same week. It's a small bus contract, and we have John Harper.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm John Harper, Manager of Contracted Transit Service in MTS. Bring before you today a business item related to our small bus transit service. As you're aware, MTS operates transit service or oversees transit service under contract with private companies. There are about 15 different contracts that we administer within MTS, and this is one of them. And so this is fairly typical work for us. This contract, this small bus transit service contract, incorporates all of the small bus work that we do in our fixed route mode. So all of the cutaway style buses that we operate in fixed route mode. We went through a standard procurement process with this contract and had an RFP, put an RFP out on the street and solicited proposals. We had an evaluation panel that included folks from within MTS, within other parts of the council, and an external representative from Anoka County, and evaluated the proposal we received and resulted in the selection that I'll bring to you today. Want to point out that we do have a small business inclusion goal. We've worked hard over the last few years with OEEO to incorporate a goal for using DBE. Typically, this service is operated by companies that do not contract out any of the operations, do not subcontract out any of the operations. And we've been working hard to work with contractors and proposers to help them find contracting opportunities to get a relatively small goal, but a goal nonetheless, into this procurement so that we can promote use of DBEs. And so that is a 1% goal. Like I say, it's relatively modest, but it's work we've done to try to do something to facilitate that for the council. And so through this process, we determined that TransDev Incorporated was the most advantageous proposer, that their proposal was most advantageous to the council. And so with that, I bring forward a proposed action that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a contract with TransDev Incorporated to provide regular route transit services in an amount not to exceed $27,491,000. Wow. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Carter.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the obvious question. Well, you know, it seems like it is a very small goal, 1%. And I think about the opportunity for like subcontracting to other firms and things like that. And I would like a little bit more of an explanation as what process you went through in terms of that. Because when I see 1%, I kind of get a hiccup.
Sure, Madam Chair and committee member, I will start, and happy to turn over the response. As I mentioned earlier, I'll mention again that the typical way of doing business within transit service delivery, if you look at TransDev, if you look at Transit Team, if you look at Schmidt and Sons, the service contractors don't typically subcontract out their work. Frankly, we don't subcontract out the work, right? Our mechanics are our employees on the Metro Transit side. Our drivers are our employees on the Metro Transit side. And so the typical way of doing the work, is to do it all in-house. And we worked with OEEO to do a small business inclusion plan for a couple of procurements that we did. We are reaching out, as I mentioned here, with this 1%. We are very early in building requirements into our RFPs. And so this 1% was a way to require businesses to work with us and reach out and see where those opportunities are. And we will see how this works, see how proposers respond to it, and move forward from there. And I'm happy to turn the presentation over for further explanation here.
Thanks. Madam Chair, Council and Committee members, Ashanti Payne, Assistant Director, Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity. In terms of this specific project and these types of projects, we always use relative availability in terms of setting a goal. There are not, I think there's only 2 firms with the NAICS code for transportation services in this region. I think there are another 2 that have at least taken the time to be, the effort to get certified with the Minnesota Unified Certification Program, but they haven't shown yet an interest to get involved in the market. So it's difficult to set goals on that component. And if we just use the math to set, and on that component, probably would have been a less than 1% availability number. However, there are other parts that are also typically not subcontracted through this work that we looked at to set a 1% goal. The apparent low bidder did commit to 4.5%. And also historically, we have not in the council's history set any goals on this work before. So this is a first. But we do understand what's been typical is not going to get us to where we need to go. So we need to think about it differently and approach it differently. And as John mentioned, we are working together to figure out how we can move the bar, so to speak, with these types of projects. So the second one, we've got another one coming up that we also set a goal on, and we're going to see. It's not hard to improve on 1%, but we set a higher goal than 1%. So we're trying to work. The overall message is we're working together to figure this out and try to move the bar.
So this is a starting point, so. It just kind of shocked me when I saw it, and I thought, but, so really, it's almost like a placeholder in terms of a starting point, and then you're going to try to improve on that over time.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Carter, it is, what we have found is the best evaluators of where they can find subcontractor are the vendors themselves. So setting a 1% goal, then the opportunity for them to find value for a subcontractor. And as I mentioned, they came back and committed to 4.5%. So it is something to kind of spur, like you said, a starter, to spur their thoughts, create the space for some innovation on their part, and also for us to take a look and see how we can improve as well.
And I'll just add, like, as Ashanti mentioned, this is something that I know has been in the works for many years. We get these big contracts, but they're service contracts, so they're hiring people themselves. So they have their own workforce that is diverse, but they're not typically structured to subcontract out to DBE. So I know we've been working for a number of years to get a start on this, because there'll be big contracts like with some of the Metro Mobility service and things, and those are long 5-year contracts. So even kind of getting this framework in place with some of these providers, I think is a really big step, because it will change how they start thinking about things. So it's just my commentary. Councilmember Morales?
Just for clarification, I understand it, but this is the goal for subcontractors that are DBE for this project, not specifically talking about the diversity that TransDev has as a company. Their actual diversity numbers as a company are obviously a lot higher than just 1%. So their staff would be working directly underneath them, but that's why the number doesn't reflect anything higher than 1%.
Madam Chair, Council Member, yes, this, unfortunately, we can't count their employees towards the small business goal, but yes, that is correct. Most of the operators in this space have pretty diverse workforces, definitely much higher than 1%. So that's always a positive, and we welcome it. We just can't count it towards the small business participation.
All right, any additional questions or comments? All right, then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-133, same week.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales, seconds by Councilmember Tony Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, John. Thank you, Ashanti. Now we're on to business item 2024-154, which is a partial right-of-way acquisition loan repayment from the city of Ramsey. And we have Tony Fisher here. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Nice to be with you, Chair and members. My name is Tony Fisher. I'm a transportation planner in MTS, and I'm here with business item 2024-154, a partial loan repayment from the right-of-way acquisition loan fund program by the city of Ramsey. So as you might remember, the right-of-way acquisition loan fund program allows the council to make loans to cities and counties to buy property that is anticipated to be needed for future highway improvements. This loan was made to the city of Ramsey in 2005 for approximately $1.2 million for a parcel. At the time, the plans for Highway 10 were to move it to the railroad, against the railroad tracks, and to move the whole roadway up against the railroad tracks, and it would have necessitated this parcel. Since then, those plans changed to leave the highway generally in place, and that just allowed the improvements to be staged over time instead of all at once. And so this parcel is no longer needed for highway improvements. And let's see, sorry. So the Ralph loan was intended to be given for the highway improvements. Those highway improvements no longer require the property. And so there's a process in our loan agreements to dispose of property in those cases where it won't be needed for the highway improvements. And that process does call for council approval on the sale of that property at market value. The property neighboring this parcel to the east is a manufactured home community, and the owner of that property has been encroaching on a small part of the Ralph property for quite a bit of time, and they've proposed to purchase a small triangle of the Ralph property. The city did have an appraisal done. They came up with a value of approximately $3.50 a square foot, and that's what they're proposing to repay the loan with, at least for this part of this small triangle part of the parcel. Staff here at the council did review that proposed repayment and did compare it to other sales in the area that are comparable and found that to be reasonable. And so we have that proposal before you is a partial loan repayment for under a third of an acre of that Ralph parcel. But with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Tony Carter.
Thank you. It appears that you have stated the property that was purchased will no longer be needed and that assessment has been made. Is it likely then that all of this property could be sold prior to the end of construction?
Chair and council members, usually we would wait till the construction is complete. In this case, construction has just recently begun, I believe this spring, on Highway 10 improvements here. Usually we'd wait till that construction is complete just to be certain and in case some of the property is needed for staging the highway improvements. But in this case, the manufactured home community next door would like to add spaces for, I think, approximately 6 more units. So they made this offer, and the city would like to proceed with its transaction.
Again, it's unusual, it's an exception. It makes sense in this case because you have predetermined it will not be used.
Correct.
And so it could be that another use could be proposed, and I'm realizing that is not the case here. We're voting on this small piece.
Yeah, Chair and council members, I'd anticipate in a few years that that the rest of the parcel will ask for an appraisal and will go to the open market for an open and competitive process to sell the rest of the parcel.
Thank you.
Okay. Additional questions? Councilmember Cameron.
Yeah, so I don't have as much local government experience as my colleague to my right. And so I would be interested in learning a little bit more about the Ralph program and what the approval process for, it doesn't have to be on the specific parcel, but what that approval process looks like.
For giving loans or for
For giving loans, yeah.
Sure. Chair and council members, so this was a program a few decades ago that was created by the legislature that allowed us to use our property tax authority to build a fund to make these loans. When we make those loans, they have to be on what we call a principal arterial or a state highway. So really just like freeways and kind of the highest level of roadways. The proposed improvements need to be officially mapped, so that creates that certainty of what the future plan is. They need to be consistent with our long-range transportation policy plan. So there are a number of requirements for making those loans at the time, and then it does have to be a willing seller. It does have to be at market value. I think those are kind of the boundaries usually of making new loans. We haven't made a new loan since 2017.
Okay.
Any additional questions or comments? Very good. Then I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-154.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Tony Carter, seconded by Councilmember Morales. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Tony. Now we are on to 2 Green Line Extension business items 2024-128 and 150. We have Nick Thompson here.
Madam Chair, council members, first business item 2024-128 for the Metro Green Line Extension Emergency Flagging Services, Contract 21P271 Amendment 3. Background of this business item: in March 2022, Rail Pros Field Services was awarded a contract 21P271 in the amount of $310,000 to provide light rail flagging in the BNSF Wayzata subdivision as part of the Green Line Extension project. We have amended that original contract 2 times to extend the time. Amendment 1 was through 2023, and Amendment 2 was through this year. This current amendment, Amendment 3, is due to an increase in forecasted flaggers needed due to the reduction in the flagging staff that BNSF is providing during the construction of the project. After we did the amendment last year, BNSF notified us. They originally provided 3 flaggers to safeguard construction and require 3 flaggers. Over time, they have scaled back to 2 flaggers in 2022, requiring us to add a flagger through this contract. In late fall last year, BNSF notified us that they were reducing their flagging staff to 1 flagger, which required us to add 2 additional flaggers through this Rail Pros Services contract. We agree with BNSF that 3 flaggers are needed to uphold the safety standards and maintain uninterrupted freight service operations in this BNS corridor. And the amendment is necessary to add funds to the current amendment to continue flagging for 2024. As we have done in the past, at the end of this construction season, we will forecast with BNSF what the needs are for future years and but potentially at that point seek an amendment. So this is a sole source, so there's no amendment. No Office of Equity and Inclusion, Equal Opportunities did not review the sole source for DBE subcontracting. The funding for this project is within the project budget. And the proposed action tonight is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute an amendment to contract 21P271 with Rail Pros Field Services for flagging services to add $243,000 to a total contract value not to exceed $553,000. And I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from council members? All right, seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-128.
Second. So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Tyrone Carter, seconded by Councilmember Morales. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now we're on to business item 2024-150, which is the Hopkins Rail Support Facility.
Madam Chair, this business item, Hopkins Rail Support Facility Construction for contract 23P171. As a background to this project, it will be for construction of a single-story building, approximately 23,000 square feet, for pre-engineered metal building, associated facilities that includes administration, management offices, tools and storage, and for equipment for support of the Green Line extension. And we have a few slides here to talk about how this building will be used, and then also some photos of renderings of what the building will look like. So it'll be used to support the Green Line extension and our rail projects for signals, communications, track, and traction power. The building itself located in Hopkins. This is a rendering of what the facility will look like when constructed. And another photo of this. A couple elements of this facility. It'll we anticipate it'll hold 51 full-time Metro Transit employees. It's a facility that'll be 24/7 operations that are out of this for support of our light rail track. It's on a 5.3 acre site. 62 parking spaces including 5 spaces that are EV ready and 8 bike parking spaces. We've built a lot of sustainable features into this building, working with the City of Hopkins. Reflective roof, low floor plumbing fixtures. We've high efficiency heating and air conditioning units. We built the roof to be solar ready, so in the future, if we determine to add solar panels to it, this will be relatively easy to add to this. We have good, strong pedestrian connections between this building and the Shady Oak light rail transit station, and then working really well with the city for stormwater treatment and management and native plantings. The invitation for bids was advertised on February 7th, 2024. As a pre-bid meeting was hosted by the council staff and outlined the solicitation requirements. There were 42 plan holders for this one, including 6 prime bidders, 23 subcontractors, 3 suppliers, and 4 plan rooms. 15 plan holders identified as women, minority, small, veteran, or disadvantaged business enterprises. We've facilitated a public bid opening on May 7th. 3 bids were received. 1 bid was determined to be non-responsive to the solicitation, and we had 2 responsive bidders. Shaw Lundquist Associates Incorporated is the low responsive and responsible bidder and recommended for award. Funding for this will come from the project. I will note that this is our last major construction procurement for the Green Line extension, so it's a major milestone for this project. We do have the landscaping procurement to go, but this is a major milestone for the project. Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity assigned a disadvantaged business enterprise goal of 18% for this contract, and OEEO has determined that the recommended bidder has met the council's DBA requirements for this contract. So the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to award and execute contract 23 P171 with Shaw Lundquist Associates Incorporated to provide construction services for the Hopkins Rail Support Facility in an amount not to exceed $14,141,521.82. And I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments? All right, I will just say yay that we're getting close to the end of contracts, so that's very good and nice to hear. And also just want to reiterate that this doesn't change the top line budget number for Green Line Extension. This was factored in already.
Correct.
Very good. All right, if there's no additional questions, then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-150.
Make a motion.
Moved by Councilmember Morales, second by Councilmember Tyrone Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Nick. All right, now we are on to business item 2024-129, which is North Star Corridor Funding Grant Agreement with MnDOT. And we have Ed Petrie back. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Ed Petrie, once again, Director of Finance, Metro Transit. I'm here to present business item 2024-129. This is the North Star Corridor Funding Agreement with the State of Minnesota Department of Transportation, MnDOT, and then the accompanying resolution 2024-8. The action this evening is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to enter into an agreement with the State of Minnesota Department of Transportation, MnDOT, for calendar year 2025 to provide funding for public commuter rail service in Sherburne County, Minnesota, for an amount up to $1.7 million per year, and then execute the attached resolution of the governing body from the Metropolitan Council to enter into the agreement with the State of Minnesota Department of Transportation for calendar year 25. This agreement with with MnDOT is for calendar year 2025, and it will provide 8.05% of the subsidy funding for public commuter rail service in Sherburne County for calendar year 2025. This is our standard operating agreement, standard application that I do every year with MnDOT for North Star Commuter Rail. And with that, Chair, committee members, I would stand for any questions.
Very good. Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Carter.
This is a minute detail. If I am reading the background properly, it says for the period of July 1st through 2009 to December 31st, 2013. Should that be for 2023, assuming this has been going on all that time? Should that end date be 2023? I was wondering about the gap between 2013 and 2023. In the background, second paragraph. Top line. And if it is expressly for that period, then I'm wondering what happened between 2013 and 2023. Minute detail, but it just bugged me. Is it a typo, perhaps? I don't know. Somebody else know? This is
It is correct. It is correct through 2013, because in the very next paragraph that says then under Minnesota laws 2013, financial assistance for North Star Commuter Rail in Greater Minnesota can now be provided by the State of Minnesota Department of Transportation beginning in calendar year 2014.
beginning in 2014.
Yep.
Okay, so.
And then that has been.
This states what has been happening.
Yeah, then
up
from
to
2014 to
then
current date.
2014.
I
Thank you.
apologize, I had to read it again just to make sure.
I appreciate it.
Yep,
Thank you.
not a problem.
Very good. All right, additional questions or comments? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-129.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tyrone Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
All right, now we are on to business item number 7, which is business item 2024-142, which is light rail vehicle contract, and we've got Mike Rood here. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Chair, council members. I'm Mike Rood. I'm the manager of light rail vehicle maintenance overhaul. I'm here today to present business item 2024-142, which we seek the Metropolitan Council to authorize the regional administrator to execute contract 24P038 with the Siemens Mobility Incorporated to provide 31 replacement pantographs for the Siemens Type 2 light rail vehicles in the amount not to exceed $905,758. So the pantograph is a roof-mounted device that collects electrical current from the overhead catenary for the power of the system of the vehicle. On the left, you can see there's a single spring pantograph, and on the right, there's a dual spring pantograph. The Type 2s that we bought, we procured in 2013, they were delivered 2013, 2014 came with a single spring pantograph, which was substandard to what our climate offers, because if you get any ice or weight or snow on it, the pantograph could drop and you'll lose service with the vehicle. The double spring pantographs are a more robust unit, and they increase service reliability. So we recommend that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute 24P with Siemens Mobility Incorporated.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to take questions.
All right, any questions? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-142.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tyrone Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. And now we are on to business item 2024-143, which is real-time sign replacement. And we have Jacob Brown here. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the council. I'm Jacob Brown, Assistant Manager of Transit Information Field Operations Team. I'm here today to present on business item 2024-143 with a recommendation for a real-time sign replacement project. So what are we doing? Well, some quick background here on the real-time sign program at Metro Transit. We currently deploy real-time signage at over 300 bus stops throughout the system. These signs provide our customers with real-time predictions, alert information, general information, and other marketing messages. At current, there are over 100 LCD monitors that are installed along the Metro A line, Nicollet Mall, Metro C line, and the Metro Orange lines. So the purpose of this project is to find a replacement solution specifically for those locations noted in the slides. Why are we doing this? Well, on the face of it, it's a very straightforward technology replacement project. But at the end of the day, these are aging monitors. They have an expected life of about 5 years, many of which have already reached the end of their expected life and need to be replaced imminently, while the other ones on this list will reach the end of their life in the coming years and will need replacement as well. These real-time sign displays are no longer manufactured by the vendors, and there are no direct replacement options available. Adding to that, each of the locations where these are installed are very different. So for instance, the Metro A line and Metro C line pylons are different sizes, different configurations. The Nicollet Mall shelters have the displays installed in the sidewalls, and the Metro Orange line have real-time signs hung from the station roofs, which are different from other places. So all this is to say there is no off-the-shelf, one-size-fits-all solution to replacing these devices. I'd like to call your attention to the image on this slide here. This is an example of a degraded screen that we have out on the Metro A line at the moment. This is indicative of what happens as these monitors start to age beyond their useful life and experience issues that they weren't intended to, such as excessive heat. There are some other images in the next display that I just want to bring to your attention to, though I won't call out specifically there. As this equipment degrades, we know that we are likely to experience more real-time sign outages, and we know that real-time sign downtime leads to a diminished customer experience and lowers overall satisfaction with the service that we provide. Metro Transit has invested heavily in real-time customer information tools and will continue to deploy real-time sign technologies with the build-out of the Metro system and other transit centers. So it's really important for us to find a replacement solution that can be scaled across these very different locations and uses in the system. Goals for this project include the maximization of system uptime while minimizing the overall support and maintenance needs of the devices, while also looking to seamlessly integrate sign monitoring, configuration, and reporting tools with our internal systems. And at the end of the day, too, we're looking to support flexible technology approaches that can be scaled for future use as well. So how do we do this? Well, since their initial deployments, Metro Transit staff better understand the complexity of real-time sign maintenance, support, and the vendor marketplace. So we partnered with our friends over in procurement to do an innovative pilot plus implementation approach where we awarded two vendors contracts to pilot two different technologies over the course of a 12-month period. On this slide here, I'd laid out some of the milestones, and I do want to call attention to the gap, given that this is a contract number starting with a 21. There were some delays in the initial contract award, as well as some supply chain issues and configuration issues with our vendors, which led to some of the delay. But in the end, we had a three-phased approach with a setup configuration period where they brought their equipment in, got it ready, and then for the last 9 months, we actually piloted the devices on the street where we looked at how they were working in a real-time environment, followed by phase 3, which is the evaluation and selection phase, which brings me here today, where we've reviewed our own internal evaluation of these devices, as well as looking at the reports that both of the vendors were to provide. So continuing with the how, we ended up piloting two different devices, the first of which was a full-color LED matrix screen by JM Fiber Optics under the TransitView brand. These devices are capable of displaying dynamic content, much like what we currently have on these screens here in this room, but also with our BRT stations out in the system. These devices did not require any substantial changes to the existing content or the alerts integration. They essentially worked out of the box with our existing systems. These signs also have a life expectancy of approximately 100,000 hours, which is roughly 10 years, and they also perform fairly well in extreme heat and cold, which is something we are not afraid of around here. The e-paper displays, on the other hand, did have limited content capabilities due to the technology that they use. They were also enabled to display Metro Transit's next trip web pages natively without additional engineering support, and they also do not work very well in extreme cold with the screens freezing up. So to that end, we are recommending an award for a contract with JM Fiber Optics for the TransitView product, since it did outperform the other vendor, and it was also the only vendor to receive passing scores on all the general requirements of the RFP that we had put out there, which include the ability to natively display our content without any issues or additional engineering support, the ability to display information without issues during extreme heat and cold, as well as the ability of the manufacturer to customize the sizes of these displays in the fabrication process, meaning that we can have them built to any size and shape that we need, meaning they will fit all of these very different locations that we have, as noted earlier. So to that end, we are recommending the award of the contract to JM Fiber in an amount not to exceed $1,897,715, which is included in our project budget. With that being said, I'll stand now for questions before moving on to the business item.
Any questions? Councilmember Cameron?
Yeah, just to get a sense, when you talk about, we are used to extremes in our climate in Minnesota. So when you talk about extreme cold, to what level did you start to see failure in this product? And then what does failure look like? Does it mean that it froze? I mean, not literally froze, but like the screen froze. But then it returned to working once it was brought back up to temperature? Or is it that once it experiences those extreme colds, the product breaks and it has to be replaced by a new screen?
Chair Barber, Councilmember Cameron, that's a really great question, and I'll just get to the point and say, no, they literally do freeze up. So the e-ink displays in particular here, we did notice when the temperatures fall to around the 10 to 15 degree marks Fahrenheit, it can get pretty technical. Basically, there is ink inside the displays that's electrostatically brought in, and once they get down to that temperature, the ink will essentially freeze in place. So what you'll see is the image that's in the screen, whether it's the schedule or alert, when it hits that threshold where it stops refreshing, it'll just hold that static state until either the temperature increases enough that it can resume the real-time refresh, or our technicians have to go out and sometimes do a power cycle in order to kind of kick it into high gear. And it's something that we've seen as part of a pilot of smaller displays with the same technology over the last couple of years. And so we do know over time that when the temperatures get low, they quite literally freeze up.
Okay. And you're not seeing that in the transit view?
Madam Chair, yes, that is correct.
Very good. Additional questions or comments? I will just say I'm really glad to see this. I think this is one of the things that, like you had mentioned, this is so specific or such a big part of the customer experience of people being able to in real time see what's going on and where they're at and when something's coming, that this is probably something we hear about. I know I do quite a bit. So I'm really glad to see this. I'm glad you found something that works in our environments and all of that. For having the adaptability to fit into different places, is there any move to standardize for all of ABRTs, it'll be this, for a transit hub, it'll be this, and, for a highway BRT, it'll be this, so that, at least maybe we have buckets of related standard designs?
Chair Barber, that's a great question. This is something that my team works very closely with the BRT project teams on. The current contracts for the pylons are 5-year contracts, so we're kind of stuck in the current iteration, and with each new project, there's been developments that have made slight changes and tweaks to those designs, and so I believe that they are coming up for another contract solicitation in the coming years, I think with the Metro F-Line or G-Line projects. I mention all that because we are working closely with them around some of these questions with standardization and the ability to better support and maintain them. So while I don't have a great answer for what that will look like, I can say it is something that is very much on our minds and that we're working towards.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Councilmember Pacheco?
Madam Chair, members, a couple things. One is that when it gets that cold, there is usually a heating element at the stop itself that you can push to turn on. Is there any way that it also heats or addresses some of the freezing that you're talking about?
Madam Chair, Council Member, unfortunately, no. Most of these real-time signs are not located within the shelter areas. Most of these are located within a pylon structure, which is adjacent to the shelters. In some cases with Nicollet Mall, they're in the sidewalls of the shelter structure, and so the heat, they're insulated against that. So while the pylons do provide some insulation against the weather, when it's cold, it's not enough that we've seen enough confidence that they work without issue. They did, I will say they worked better inside a pylon environment versus on the pole-mounted style that we piloted out early in the last couple of years, but that's probably due to the residual heat from the other components within the pylon structures. But unfortunately, no, they're not connected, so just too far away.
Madam Chair, usually if it gets that cold, I go home, but I can usually see it right there. But the other question, and maybe it's not even a question, it's when we were in management committee last 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a presentation regarding the rate boxes and the training, and I may have misspoke of what that is, but there was a training around this, looking at the changes in these rate boxes. We trained some internal and some external HR opportunities. Are you doing a similar type training program as they were doing around this one product? And it looked like it was a successful program, and I don't know if that's something similar that you would all look at.
Madam Chair, Council Member, that's a great question. Right now, at this point, we don't have a training program set up. We do have 2 technicians that provide all the service for these real-time signs, with a 3rd slated in the budget this year to come on board. Given the nature of this equipment and how it was brought to life and how we've assumed responsibility for it, there is some training that we do internally to bring people up to speed. So while it may not be a structured program for bringing in, trades groups from the outside, it is something that we could consider as the system grows. We do know that we are looking at more than doubling the number of real-time signs on the bus side of things over the next 5 years. And if we look at plans for the metro build-out over the next 10, 20 years, it'll be quite substantial. So again, while we're not doing it today, this is really good information to know for me as the manager to start looking at potential opportunities for future support.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Tyrone Carter.
Yeah, I just had a question. So, I'm assuming that as you go along, these signs are going to improve. Is that what you're saying? At some point, are you going to be able to interrogate the signs, ask questions, short answer stuff?
Sure. Madam Chair, Councilmember Carter, at this point, I would like to call these dumb signs, in that they're a very one-way opportunity to present customers with information. I know that recently the Minneapolis Downtown Council deployed a bunch of interactive wayfinding kiosks in the downtown area that allow for a little bit more interactivity. At this time, we are not looking to do that. The current pylon structures, the way that they're built, these screens are not really accessible. They're too high off the ground, which is, for security purposes, but also visibility purposes. And at this time, there's nothing that my team is looking at in terms of piloting that type of technology. But as it becomes more available, these are the things that we're always keeping an eye on. And so maybe I will have an opportunity to come before the council in the future with a new idea that we would like your support on. But at this time, unfortunately, we don't have any plans for that.
Okay, because I could see a value in that. A few months back, I was on a tour, and we got to a section that was boarded up, and there was a sign there, and we tried to call. Of course, we couldn't get through, and I thought if the sign had been a little bit more interactive, I would have been able to find out, well, where's the other entrance, because everything's boarded up here, and, it could have been like a real-time map situation.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilmember Carter, that's really good feedback, and I appreciate it. Our signs do have the ability to display detour communications messages, so we do use this in some other fashion. So when a route is on detour, I'm thinking specifically the C line and D line this summer up on Penn Avenue and 44th. What we've done there is put takeover screens on those, directing customers to alternative bus stops. It's something that we're getting better at. We have some limited capabilities with our content management system, but these are the types of things that we are actively looking at all the time to find ways to improve the messaging to our customers, so that way, we can tell them where they need to go. So while we're not perfect, we are trying, and that type of feedback is very helpful for us to know how we can maybe do better to serve our customers.
Okay, any additional questions, comments? All right.
Madam Chair, thank you. At this time, I would like to present business item 2024-143, real-time sign replacement pilot and implementation project. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute contract 21P366B with JM Fiber Optics Incorporated to implement a real-time sign replacement solution in an amount not to exceed $1,897,715. The background was previously provided in the presentation, and the small business inclusion, there was a 3% goal assigned to this project, and OEEO has confirmed the vendor's commitment to that goal. Are there any further questions on this project?
Any additional? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-143.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Tyrone Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we are on to our final business item. It's business item 2024-148, which is MnDOT funding agreement for IIJA matching funds, and we have Carrie Desmond here.
Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Desmond. I'm the manager for electric bus infrastructure, and I'm here to present business item 2024-148. So this business item is for income, so receiving funds. So as background, in June of last year, Metro Transit was awarded an FTA low or no emissions grant worth $17,532,900. And with that grant, we committed to provide the local match, which is $2,902,100 for a total project cost of $20,435,000. Fast forward through the fall of last year in November, we were excited to hear that Metro Transit was awarded state funding from a new fund that the legislature established in the 2023 session. So MnDOT administers this. It's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act Matching Fund. And what that's going to allow us to do is have MnDOT basically provide the full local match for this federal grant we received. So we're bringing it to you because of the income policies. This requires council action. It'll bring funding into two projects. One of them is for bus replacements, the other's for electric bus infrastructure. And for small business inclusion, any current or planned projects that use these funds will be subject to federal disadvantaged business enterprise requirements or DBE requirements. So the proposed action is that the council authorize the regional administrator to execute a MnDOT administered grant agreement 24I-026, which provides $2,902,100 in matching funds from MnDOT's IIJA discretionary match program and applies it to Metro Transit's awarded FTA fiscal year 23 low or no emissions grant. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council members? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-148.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tyrone Carter. Is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. So before we move on to our information item, we'll go through what goes consent, non-consent to the full council. We'll just note that this was actually the reduced agenda, so just so everyone's aware. So obviously the budget amendment will go non-consent because it's a joint item. The same week item will go non-consent. I'd recommend that the Hopkins Rail Support Facility contract go non-consent. And the last one, because I think it's a very good news one. So if everyone agrees. All right, there you go. I'll give her my cheat sheet. All right, now I'm going to turn it over, back over to Carrie Desmond and Jeremiah Ryder. They're going to present on our zero emissions bus transition plan.
Thank you, Chair Barber. Do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yep. Good evening, Chair and committee members. I'm Jeremiah Ryder, Assistant Director of Bus Maintenance.
All right, so we are here to present our annual information item on progress implementing our zero emission bus transition plan. So just to start us off, I'm not going to go through every one of these, but we do have a reference slide right at the beginning. This program is a little bit of alphabet soup, so bear with us, but keep that handy. So for agenda, a little bit of background on the adopted plan, some updates that came out of this year's state legislative session, brief background on the project we're presenting metrics on. We'll run through performance, how things are going, and then some project updates as well. So to start out, on the screen right now are our guiding principles for the plan, and this is really the policy framework that helps us have consistent decision-making as things continue to evolve throughout the program and with the technology. So we start with technical viability, really looking at what are the assets we're procuring and what's the best fit within our service today to use them. From there, we prioritize on an equity and environmental justice lens. So that's looking to really target the investments in communities where air pollution, racial, and socioeconomic disparities are greatest, while we're balancing some of the different things we're learning with this new technology. And then finally, we are seeing increased costs both on the capital side And you'll hear about some of the operating aspects as well, so making sure we're investing within our financial means and also getting the most use out of this technology that we can. So our current plan was adopted in February of 2022 and submitted to the legislature. And at that time, we set a target that at least 20% of our 40-foot bus replacement purchases would be electric during that time. So that's what we're measuring progress against right now. And with that, we made several commitments as well. One of them being community engagement. So making sure we're going back out at least once a year to our staff, to our stakeholders in the community, to all of you, to share how things are going and what we're learning. With that comes the performance reporting we're going to talk about, and that then informs our budget planning as well. So on the screen right now is the slate of key performance indicators that we identified in the plan. We've got a suite of 8 that tell us different things about how we're doing relative to the different guiding principles, different aspects of the program, and then you can see a map to the guiding principles. So it's not trying to indicate success or how things are going, but just how these metrics relate to the principles. So before I go into some of the specifics from the last year, we wanted to highlight some of the things that came out of this legislative session. So this was a topic that the Transportation and Finance Committees took up throughout session, and they updated some of the requirements related to our transition plan. So the first one, they're looking for us to put forward a plan for how beginning in 2035, we will only purchase zero-emission buses. So that's something we're gonna be studying in depth coming up here. They also added different topics they want us to address. So looking at different ways we can maximize our greenhouse gas emission reductions, not just through this program, but through transit as a whole. So how does the propulsion type impact greenhouse gas emissions, but also things like service expansion, reliability improvements we're doing across the system, and other improvements that help get people onto transit and out of their cars. The other thing that came out of this is they updated the frequency they want to hear from us. So previously, the legislation required every 5 years. Now it's every 3 years. So we'll be bringing our next plan update forward to meet that February 15th of 2025 deadline. And we're working to hopefully issue notice to proceed in the next few days here to get our consultant team and the project management team up and running to work on this. So with that, I'm going to move into the project. We're going to talk about metrics. So right now, our metrics are focused on the Metro C line, which just celebrated its 5th anniversary this weekend. And that is our electric bus pilot for the agency. So with that project, partially funded by a 2017 Lono grant, we brought in 8 60-foot electric buses from New Flyer. Those were the first ones made in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And we also purchased new diesel buses at the same time, so we can compare those head-to-head in the same operating environment. We also have 8 plug-in chargers that are at our Haywood garage. And I'm going to highlight here a bit of history here, or part of the journey along the way. We had the first ones made for that product as well, and had a lot of challenges early on that we worked through with the vendor. So we did replace those under warranty with a later generation model from the same vendor. I highlight that because you're going to see that annotated throughout with the metrics. And then the final asset for this project is we started the program with 2 pantograph chargers, high-powered chargers that were used at the end of line at the Brooklyn Center Transit Center. Also the first 2 made. And those have been retired. We experienced a lot of challenges with that equipment, poor reliability that wasn't meeting our service needs, and we're currently working through that process with FTA. Being the first ones with the product, we're also the first ones working through this new product and end of life with FTA. So with that, just for background, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremiah to talk about some of the fleet metrics.
Thank you. So again, one of our fleet metrics is fleet mileage. And fleet mileage really is a byproduct of bus availability, reliability, and then also range capabilities. Fleets with high miles indicate minimal maintenance and was required and good range capacity. As you can see in 2023, the fleet of BEBs, or battery electric buses, ran nearly 58,000 miles fewer than in 2022. The significance of the volume of battery cells that needed to be replaced during that timeline led to that reduce in mileage. So they were out of service for an extended period of time for those replacements, which led to fewer miles. That also impacts our reliability matrix that you'll see later on as well. The en-route charging also stopped in June through several months of the investigation that we are going through with FTA on retiring those particular equipments. Also dropped the amount of miles that those buses were able to travel. During that time frame and through the month of December, we ended up having to reduce the overall anticipated mileage for those buses from 90 miles down to 60 because of the range capacity and only being able to charge them at the garage. So as you can see here, in the BEVs traveled far fewer miles than its compared diesel counterpart, which is about 75% fewer miles. Going forward, we're focusing on our 40-foot BEB development or deployments to take advantage of their greater range capacities that they have. Bus availability. Bus availability represents the percentage of time a bus is available for use relative to how often it is planned to be used. Bus availability declined in 2023. Again, this is due to the large number of battery cells that need to be replaced. These battery cells were covered under warranty and replaced by the manufacturer. On a typical day, we required 6 buses for the planned service, with 2 remaining as spares. On average, about 4 of the buses were available per day. Bus reliability, how it's measured, and we measure that based off the mean distance between failures. And so that's a number of miles traveled divided by the number of chargeable road calls. And that's what gives us that reliability. System-wide, the BEBs were below the average. The average system-wide bus mean distance of failure was 6,591 miles for all bus lengths, propulsion types. The significant volume of battery replacements during 2023 led to the out of service, meaning fewer miles were able to travel, and that impacted this reliability matrix. Less miles traveled impacts the overall, it is impacted greatly by the size of the fleet. So if you have a smaller fleet, miles traveled are a little bit less as anticipated. And when one particular bus of that group goes down, that impacts this reliability matrix a little bit more.
All right, so moving on to another topic here, looking at the environmental impact. For this metric, we're using a nationally recognized tool that the Argonne National Labs produces, and that helps us look at the environmental impact and the greenhouse gas emission reduction, both from the electricity source, so the emissions from producing that electricity, and then also the emissions of the buses operating out in the community. So for context here, we often talk about how transportation is the largest emitting sector in industry in the state of Minnesota, but we want to look at buses specifically. And so with buses overall are less than 2% of Minnesota's transportation emissions, and that's all buses. So that's transit buses, school buses, intercity buses. So just to get a sense of how this fits in. And so this is certainly one aspect of our efforts to improve or reduce our environmental impact. But it's also all these parallel efforts we're doing to improve our service, to expand our service, and shrink those bars you see at the top for single occupancy vehicles by encouraging mode shift to transit. So over the life of the program, from the time we launched in 2019 through end of the last calendar year, we've reduced greenhouse gas emissions by about 430 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. I don't know about you, but that's not a unit of measure that's very accessible to me of what is a metric ton of carbon dioxide. So we use the EPA's tools that help make some analogies here. So it's about 42,000 gallons of diesel, or about 85 homes electricity use for a year, just to give a sense of what that amount is. The next metric we look at is equity and environmental justice. And this is really helping us understand how are we doing relative to the commitments we made to community members about how we're going to prioritize in this transition. So as background, this was an area of the plan that we really co-created with community members. We had a lot of engagement both internally with staff, but also with different community organizations, whether it's neighborhood associations, advocacy groups, really anyone out in the community that's interested in this work we're doing. And we used the Council's Equity Considerations data set, which is a data set of about 300 variables that are mapped at the census tract level throughout the region. And you can see in the table on the screen the 7 we pulled out that we felt related to this effort. And we asked the community to rank them for us, help us prioritize how we should use these different factors to prioritize deployment. And so the rankings you see in the table then translate to the map you see on the right. And the pink areas are the census tracts where those variables are the highest. And so that's where we're trying to deploy our zero emission buses first. So right now we're operating on a single route, which runs through North Minneapolis. So we're 100% of our deployments in high priority areas. But we're really interested to see how this metric advances throughout the years as we start to deploy on regular route service and pepper these buses throughout the region to make sure we're really honoring the commitments we've made. We've got a few left here. The next one looks at energy cost per mile. So this is looking at what does it cost in propulsion energy, as well as the diesel fuel for the auxiliary heat on board, which every bus in our fleet has, regardless of the propulsion type. So looking at how those compare. So the green line here is what we're paying on a per mile basis for that propulsion and heating cost on our electric buses. The blue line is the diesel buses running on the same route. And we're continuing to see higher cost on a per mile basis for the electric. They are easier to predict just because electricity rates don't change as often. So from a budgeting standpoint, that can be helpful versus kind of the volatility you see in the oil market. But it is an area we're working and continuing to work with Excel as well as with the Public Utilities Commission to look for opportunities to improve on this. Last 2 metrics here. Looking at the infrastructure side, so these are comparable to the fleet side that Jeremiah talked about. The first one's the availability. So in simple terms, how often is the system available when we need it in order to charge a bus? Historically, this isn't something we've worried about. We haven't worried about whether diesel was going to come out of the fuel pump, but with these low early serial number products in particular, this is something we've had to pay closer attention to. So we've got a few bits of context here. One of the most common questions we get from the public when talking about this program is, why can't you just take the battery off the bus and swap a new one in and put it back on the road and charge that battery back somewhere else while it's not in a bus? So we use this slide to help put some context to that and kind of compare your traditional car battery size, what you're talking about with electric car, and then the scale we're talking about that's many times over on a bus. And the way these are designed, largely for safety purposes, is that it is a fair amount of work to disconnect and reconnect to make sure everything's functioning properly. So it's really not designed for a quick rip and replace and keep things running. The other piece we like to explain is the whole ecosystem we're talking about here. So you notice we're talking about infrastructure availability and not just chargers. So we're talking about everything from the utility grid and the reliability and availability of that, to the power coming to our sites, the switch gear working, which is like a big panel board. So think about the breakers in your house or your apartment, just much larger. And then the charging equipment itself, so the power cabinet and the dispenser. And that whole system has to work in order for the bus to be charged and go out into service. So specific to the chargers, since replacing the garage chargers under warranty in 2021, we're happy to share we're continuing to see strong results there, and they're meeting our needs. We're exceeding 90% availability with the charging equipment at the garage. The metric that goes hand in hand with this is the reliability. So how much effort is it taking us to achieve those availability results? How often do we have to do unplanned maintenance? And we measure this by looking at the number of incidents. So again, small data set, it's a lot of fluctuation here, but you see the peak in 2021 when we were replacing, and that was just 3 months of data, not a full year, when we saw that peak. Sharp decline after replacement in 2022. We did see a few more incidents in 2023, but to keep it in context, we saw 8 incidents for the entire year with 8 pieces of equipment. So not something we're particularly concerned about right now. The final piece of the puzzle we want to talk about is the utility grid and power disruptions. So very strong results here. Again, not an area of high concern, but we did have one disruption at the garage. That was about a 2-hour outage in 2023. And then we also had 2 momentary disruptions. So think about like when your lights flicker. Analogous to that, but this equipment is very sensitive and it's designed to be that way to ensure safety protocols. So when you have those momentary disruptions, it goes into a protective state. It stops the charging session so that there's an opportunity for human intervention to make sure there's no issues that would cause a problem. So the reason we bring those up is anytime these happen, whether it's a full outage or a quick blip, staff have to go manually restart every charge session and reset every charge session because of those safety protocols with the equipment, which we want to be there. They're necessary to be there to protect the equipment. With 8 chargers, that's not a big deal. The power goes out or the lights flicker, you go check the equipment. But at scale, this is something we're going to need to make sure we have procedures in place when you have a large portion of the fleet that this happens to. That reset could take time, and in order to make sure things are ready for pull-out in the morning, this could be more disruptive. So to summarize, you can see a comparison of the last 2 calendar years here. We are seeing a reduction in mileage and some of the aspects that Jeremiah talked about, and these are really attributable to 2 main things. One of them being we're seeing a lot of individual battery cell failures and time that the buses aren't available while the manufacturer's either getting parts, the tools needed, et cetera, to do that work. And then the time between when we started experiencing issues with the en-route chargers in June and when the schedules were changed in December to make a better fit between what the bus could do without that en-route charging and finish its work for the day. So those are really the 2 main things that are leading to some of the decline in the metrics over the last year. So I'm going to switch here from data to kind of bigger picture project updates, and then we'll have some time for questions. So one of the things we wanted to highlight that we're excited about and making progress on is one of the key objectives and strategies in the adopted transition plan was in these early projects to really diversify the fleet, to get experience with different bus manufacturers, with different charger manufacturers in small orders to help us really understand what the market's offering. Help us understand what the different product offerings are, what the different service models are to best support us in keeping this equipment up and running. And with recent business items we've brought forward in the last year, we're excited to share we're going to have 2 different bus manufacturers in the fleet once these projects come to fruition that I'm going to talk about, and 4 different charger manufacturers all on our main campus between the Haywood and North Loop garages, which is not only going to help us gain experience, but it's really going to give us a kind of ground zero or central location for training, for learning, to make sure all the different combinations of equipment work well together. And so that's something we've taken that strategy from our plan, and that's really translated into our procurements and the business items we've brought forward. So one of the unique things with the low or no emission grants is we're actually able to name partners in the grants. That's a unique provision to that particular grant program. And then when FTA and USDOT evaluate the different submissions, that's the competitive piece of selecting. They look at it on a national basis and selecting a breadth of work for these different vendors across the nation. So that's unique with this work and this program, that we're able to name partners and don't necessarily have to go do an RFP. And then we also have, you've heard this spring about some of our procurements using the Washington State Cooperative Agreement. So we've signed on to that, and that means we've agreed to the contract language, the specifications that the state of Washington set up, and so have the vendors. And so that allows us to condense then that contracting time so that we can get this equipment here sooner, start learning sooner, and advancing our program. So we're using these 2 different tools together, the discretionary funding and then that contracting mechanism to help us advance the strategies in our adopted plan. So long-winded way of saying we've got a lot of exciting things coming that are really going to help us keep learning in the next few years here. So just to give a sense of timeline, last few slides here. The next project that'll come into revenue service is the Metro Gold Line. So we've got 5 60-foot New Flyer electric buses coming into the fleet for that, and 4 ABB chargers. Those are going at our East Metro garage. We're starting construction this month, so we're going to be breaking ground here any day to bring the new power feeders in with Excel for this facility, and then the rest of the installation work will follow throughout the fall and winter and testing and such. So that'll be entering revenue service next year. And then the other facility to highlight is our North Loop garage. So these projects, you heard business items in April. This will be bringing 20 40-foot Gillig electric buses into the fleet and 18 plug-in chargers, 6 each from 3 different manufacturers, all at the same time. So that's really going to help us put all this equipment through its paces. And then we also are going to have some mobile, smaller power output chargers for maintenance purposes and software as well. And we're expecting these to enter revenue service in 2026 on local routes. So that kind of ties back to the equity and environmental justice metric of where these get used. I'm going to ask Jeremiah to talk about bus procurements for a second here.
Yeah, so bus procurements that have taken place in 2024. The contracts that have already been executed is the 40-foot electric buses, which is 20 of those from Gillig. We did utilize the Washington State Cooperative contract on that. Then 60-foot electric buses through New Flyer, which we also utilized the Washington State contract on that particular procurement as well. And then 60-foot diesel, biodiesel buses through New Flyer that was using our own RFP. As you can see, we have one that's not under contract, and that's the 73 biodiesel buses that was passed through on the business items this evening. So I look forward to that coming to you in the near future. And that will be utilizing our options of our RFP that we have already entered into. So as we progress through 2024 and looking into 2025, when the majority of these buses are going to be delivered and put into service with the 20 electrics going into service in 2026. That puts us at roughly 21.5%, so meeting our transition goals of 20%. The 2025 CIP will detail what our project plans are moving forward with the buses that we'll be bringing in as replacements, and also the electric supplement to that as well.
Final two slides here, home stretch. We wanted to share with you what we've applied for in our 2024 Lono grant application. So this was submitted in April, and the deadline for FTA to announce awards is in early July. So we'll be hearing soon about this. But this is the largest grant application we've done to date by over fourfold, almost fivefold. So we applied for up to $90 million in funding. And this is to help with a few different things. Facility improvements and kind of readiness as we continue to expand at our East Metro garage. And then also 35 40-foot electric buses. So that's what we have in the current adopted CIP through the remainder of the planning cycle, so through that 2027 deadline or target we have in the transition plan. And then the charging equipment to go with that as well. So we would envision those buses going in regular route service and a mix of the East Metro garage and North Loop garages. So we're eagerly awaiting to hear results on that one, but a few weeks out yet. And then the final thing we wanted to share is some of the engagement work over the last year. So one of the things we wanted to share is just the breadth of peer agencies we're meeting with, whether that's agencies seeking us out, us going to peers, but really sharing what we're all learning, some of the challenges we're going through, some of the solutions we're finding, so that we're all helping each other and not repeating the same learnings. So you can see a breadth of different agencies there. We're also doing a lot on the national stage, so I wanted to highlight the industry organizations. We just started, myself here, third term with the APTA, so the American Public Transportation Association's Zero Emission Fleet Committee as an officer of that. So helping lead the national kind of work program with APTA related to this and offerings across the community. We were the hosts for the APTA Mobility Conference last year, so a lot of different sessions around this topic and tours and things of that nature. But we're also being sought out for national research, so things with the National Renewable Energies Lab, the National Academies of Science, some of the research findings they're putting out to help put materials out for the industry. So just a lot of work going on to collaborate, not just locally, but across the continent really on this work. And then also some of our educational partners. We're deepening relationships with the University of Minnesota, with the University of St. Thomas, and some of their specific graduate programs they have in this space. So bringing students in for field trips, lectures, conferences, things of that nature, to really try and get the next generation of students excited about this as well. I probably could do a whole presentation just on this slide, but you've heard enough. So with that, we will stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Pacheco.
Madam Chair, members, I'm looking at the last slide with all the partners. I was kind of surprised you don't see Xcel Energy or in there as a partner somewhere.
Absolutely a partner. We meet with them every month, multiple times a month in lockstep on programs. We're co-implementation partners here. So, and they invited us to present at their customer experience day last year and share about the work we're doing together, and a lot of co-presentations around the country as well. So apologize for that oversight.
All right, additional questions? Councilmember Cameron?
I guess, given some of the metrics that you shared, I have some concerns, especially when we're talking about the reliability, the accessibility, the availability, thank you, and the mileage of the vehicles. When we're talking particularly about the Gold Line, and the launch of that program, knowing that that will be an all-electric line. And so can you talk a little bit about the planning to make sure that there is minimal disruption to services around that program?
Chair, council members, certainly. So for the Metro Gold Line, it is a mixed fleet, similar to Sea Line. So it includes 12 diesel buses and then the 5 electric buses. So part of that fleet mix is ensuring that we have coverage if we have to fall back to the diesel fleet, that our learnings are not negatively impacting our customers. So the goal is to continue to get experience by having a few electric buses mixed in there and allow us to try out 6 model years later of this bus compared to Sea Line, and also try it out on a dedicated guideway application. But we do have that contingency fleet with new diesel buses as well to fall back on.
And who I might add, the one thing with the Sea Line electric buses, those were the first 60-foot articulated buses in the country that were electric. So having the ability to share with other agencies and things what we've learned, work with the partners, both at Siemens and New Flyer, I think has been beneficial. But we definitely learned some things along the way. So.
And I'll just add that the battery capacity on these newer buses that we're going to receive is much greater than what we currently have. So extending the range out further gives us that reliability matrix.
All right. Additional questions? Councilmember Pacheco.
I guess it's consistent with the question I asked before. It seems like we're moving into different areas and where we're going to need more HR and some different capacity. Is there a program there? I see educational partners, look like St. Thomas and University of Minnesota, but are you looking as well as the VOTEC institutions that we have, and how are we engaging them?
Do you want to speak to the apprentice programs?
Yeah, so we do have our own internal Madam Chair and committee members, we do have our own internal apprenticeship program that we have within Metro Transit. Currently, our first cohort is going through that process, and it's a 3-year program. And in there, they learn about battery electric buses, hybrid buses, alternative propulsions that we're still learning about as well. So at the end of the program, they do come out full journey person workers that are ready to go right into our fleet. So, and then part of our grants also, part of our grants also does have a workforce development aspect of that as well in the low-no grants. So there is some money tied to that we are applying towards our apprenticeship programs.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Well, the reason I'm asking as well is, I mean, we've been, almost everything we hear these days has some HR component, some equity component and the like, but and we were talking about the rate or the revenue, I don't know what was that machine there, but anyway, the rate, whatever it was. Anyway, the training that went on there and the opportunities in this last presentation, opportunities there, and I just don't want to farm everything out. I'd like to see it all working with some of the institutions that we have that can fill in that gap from school to starting, and then even longer. The presentation we had the other day, they had one individual was a blackjack dealer prior to this, another two are internal. And one of them said, I just didn't have enough opportunities here, but this program really gave them some opportunities to move up. So I don't want it to be the sidebar. As we look forward, it should be, something that's engaging all the way through.
Chair and council members, if I can add to what my colleague Jeremiah said, part of the structure of the apprentice program is a mix of internal candidates that are looking to advance within the agency and need the training and the reskilling to do that, and then external candidates as well. So that's part of the makeup of each cohort. So that's a central area, and historically that was a program that was done a number of years ago in partnership with a local community college, I believe. But part of the barriers we're trying to reduce with the redesigned program is historically they'd go to school for 8 hours, they'd go to work for 8 hours, and they'd have 8 hours for the rest of their life, which isn't a balanced way to stay afloat. And so by bringing this program in-house now, they're able to do school and on-the-job training in that 8-hour shift and then have more balanced outside of work and school. And so that's part of trying to reduce barriers to help with that training and get access to these careers.
Just the last comment too is that, as a graduate of a Votech High School, one of the last ones, it was definitely the last one in Minneapolis, closed in like 73. Now everyone's looking at if we should have kept those Votech schools and how much they're needed these days. And I think that I just don't want to bypass as we see, here's an opportunity to engage and maybe set up an ongoing system, because we're going to need these trades across the board.
And I did have to look up, Councilmember, what it was called, what the machines were called, because I had the presentation and I couldn't remember either. It's the Revenue Electronic Equipment Technician Training Program. That's why we don't remember it. We need a new acronym so we remember. All right, I believe Councilmember Tyrone Carter, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm glad that we're a leader in this area, but I do agree with what Councilmember Pacheco was saying. You need to make sure you have more ground level access to people that wouldn't otherwise have opportunities, particularly ability to bring them on at a lower trainee level and to target them up over a long period of time. Those are the kind of things that people need in terms of opportunity. So I'm hoping that's going to be part of our future. But I applaud the idea that we're moving in this direction, because you don't want to be last person to be riding a horse and everyone's driving a car. So it's good.
Any additional questions, comments? Councilmember Cameron.
So tied into that, I see that we are still advancing a number of different vendors as part of this. So that adds to the complication of what they just talked about in terms of creating a workforce around it. Is there, are we honing in on a few vendors, or are we going to, at a certain point, it doesn't become, I guess where I'm going with this is that at a certain point, it doesn't become scalable to have so many different vendors and so many different charging station vendors and so many different vehicle vendors. And so when is that point when we say, okay, we have found the right fit for our fleet to move forward with and kind of hone in on those vendors?
Chair and council members, I would say we're at the beginning days of implementing this strategy. We just executed the contracts that'll allow us to do this. So just for context, combining what's entering revenue service over the next couple of years here, we'll have 13 new flyer buses, 20 Gillig buses, and then anywhere from 6 to 10 chargers from each of the manufacturers on the screen. So that's really implementing that strategy. Today, we've got 8 new flyer buses and 8 Siemens chargers. So the work we're doing to design, to construct, to test, commission, to teach with all of this equipment over the next few years here, the goal behind the strategy is that gives us the confidence to figure out what direction we want to go with larger orders. Because it isn't sustainable to, you look to your left, it's one thing, you look to your right, it's another thing. But we're really trying to be deliberate in how we learn and how we put learning objectives into each of these projects to be building blocks that add up to the bigger picture. So I share all that to say I don't think the goal is to do a few of these and a few of those forever. But this is our chance to get experience with all of these vendors, because particularly on the charger side, some of these vendors only work in this space. So we don't have another way to learn about how they operate or the architecture of their equipment and how maintainable is that compared to another without trying them out in different projects and small orders. And so that pairs with this performance report we do on an annual basis of, I think it's going to be real interesting in, say, 2027. The first year we have results for side by side of all these vendors to say, how is it going and is one pulling out ahead of the rest? But it's also helping us learn how to write a more robust RFP and specification for when we do get to those larger orders and really know what we need to be successful. So it's a long-winded way of saying it's going to take a little time to get there, but it's not intended to operate this way forever, but to put us on more solid footing as we move forward in future years.
Councilmember Cameron?
So this is, we're talking about battery electric buses right now, but I think, I'm not that familiar with the field. And so looking towards the future, are there alternative propulsions in buses in existence or upcoming technology that is zero emission outside of battery electric?
Chair and council member, the other area we're seeing activity in the industry is with hydrogen fuel cell propulsion. So it's still a battery on board the bus. It's a fuel cell electric bus. So instead of electricity charging that battery, now it's hydrogen charging that battery. So we're starting to see more agencies try that out in small quantities and pilots. One of the challenges we have here in Minnesota is there's no commercial source of hydrogen today. So that infrastructure side of the equation, how are we going to fuel those buses? But the Biden administration and the Department of Energy did award last year a hydrogen hub to, I forget the name of the coalition or joint venture, but it's Minnesota, North and South Dakota. And in the initial press releases last year when this was awarded for negotiating a grant agreement, Excel was projecting 2035 for revenue operations. So it's something we're monitoring, we're learning about, but we're also trying to see kind of where the industry goes of how to make this viable for us as a potential solution in the future.
All right, additional questions, comments?
It's a good idea. I mean, the exhaust is water, so couldn't ask for better.
I have a couple of quick questions, and mine are very C-line specific. So with the en route chargers being deserviced or taken out of service, is there any plan to come up with something else for those or to come up with a replacement for them? And then how are we actually operating? Like, are the electric buses doing some runs and then they're getting swapped out, or how are we doing this?
Chair Barber, so there are a few different aspects here to your question. The first part of what are we doing and where do we think we're going, we're actively in discussions with FTA. Since we do have serial number one, this is precedent setting for them as well. So not only discussions with the regional office, but with headquarters as well. So that's something we can report back out on in the future, but that's very much in progress. And taking a little bit of time to work through since it's new to them as well. Specific to how we're operating, that's part of what was influencing the metrics for last year. So the equipment came out of service in June. There were several months of investigations, troubleshooting with vendors before it was determined that these were going to be retired. And so during that time, we still had the approximately 90 miles per run scheduled. And as the weather got cooler into the fall in particular, that became too long. And so we would have, on a per trip basis or a per block basis, the need to swap out before the end with a diesel bus in order to make sure ultimately a bus was there for our customers. And that's part of the mileage, but also the road calls or the reliability metric we were talking about. And then with the December schedule changes last year, that's when the block lengths were reduced from 90 miles down to 60 miles so that we were scheduling for what a bus could reliably do without that charging.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right, any final questions or comments? All right, thanks for all the great work. And even though there's been some hiccups, there's still forward progress, so it's nice to see. All right, so that concludes our business for the evening. Without objection. All right. We're adjourned.